We are the weirdos, mister.
Listening further past this point, you enter into the non-negotiable contact with us, in which you agree to like, share, and comment positively on this podcast on any social media platform you prefer, and also quite politely to share this podcast in post. Share content. This contract is no stereotype. Welcome back to the Final Ghouls of Horror. I'm Jeremy.
I'm Holly.
And I'm Elle.
We're three people who love horror and are coming at it from different perspectives of who we are, as well as very different levels of experience with the genre, which we're always excited to talk about. And this week we're heading out to the woods to play a blindfold game. That doesn't sound creepy at all. Taking a look at some Disney horror in The Watcher in the Woods.
Something happened in these woods. Something that has never been explained. And it's happening again. Now.
Did you hurt yourself?
Oh, it's just a little cut.
What sort of person are you? Sensitive? Do you sense things?
The past pursues the present like a recurring dream. What began as a game ended when a young girl vanished into thin air.
All right, so what is your guys' history and familiarity with this film? Holly, this was your pick. What is your history with this movie?
I was going to say you want to start with me because there's a lot of history. So you've heard my whole story of the introduction to horror and everything. The Shining incident and everything. So
the Shining incident.
The Shining incident.
That's officially a part of Final Ghouls lore now.
I think that's what my father called it when I brought it up a few weeks ago, the Shining incident.
Love that.
Yes. So after that, my mom was like, okay, maybe we need to tone down a bit what I'm showing her, but she's still really into horror. So she showed me Watcher in the Woods.
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, it's a Disney movie. And I'm like, what? and yeah, she told me the history. She apparently, when did this come out? 1980?
Correct, 1980.
I'm mathing for how old my mother was at that point. But yeah, she saw it in theaters, she said, when it came out. And she was like really obsessed with it when it first came out. And I will bring up other stuff later on because there are many different versions of the ending.
Yes, there are.
Even more. There's one particular one that she always thought should have been the ending. And again, I will revisit this. And she read about it in the newspaper when the movie had first come out. And it's been hard for me to find it anywhere else, but I do believe that this is one of the many versions because there are so many versions. But right. She said she had read an interview with one of the creators. And apparently Disney had gotten mad about that version and wouldn't even film it. So I'll get into that one later. But yes, I became instantly obsessed with this. They had the film at my Blockbuster. And I think I'm the only person that ever rented it. And I constantly rented it. And I showed it to all of my friends, whether they wanted to see it or not, even though most of them liked it, to the point that, like, we tried the whole blindfold thing, but we didn't go to a chapel or anything. And I was the one that was blindfolded because, like, the other girls wouldn't do it because they were cowards. But yeah, but then like, and they broke the circle and no one took it seriously. So it didn't work.
You did not get trapped in another dimension for many, many years. That's unfortunate.
No, though my cousin decided to play a fun trick on me when I think she had seen the movie. I hadn't yet. And it was like one day I was at my grandmother's house. And she convinced me, because I was like 6, she convinced me that I was living in another dimension. that I had fallen through a mirror or something. And like she was basically using the lore of like Watcher in the Woods. And she was like, "Oh no, you were part of this ritual, but you don't even remember. And now this is actually just another dimension where
Right.
everyone looks the same, but everything is a little off." And she would like move different things and play tricks on me throughout the day to make me believe it to the point where I had a nervous breakdown. And it's the maddest I'd ever seen my grandmother, who was usually like a really kind person, who was about ready to kill my cousin.
I love how, I don't know if this is still the case. I am not a kid today, but I love how back when we were growing up, the whole idea of pranks is no, let's gaslight you to the point that you are losing your fucking mind.
Yeah.
Like, I never got it that bad, but there is a famous story that's told in the family about how, so my brother is 3 years older than me. And it's Saturday morning, you'd wake up early, get your cereal, you sit down, you watch cartoons, and he decided to convince me that we couldn't eat the cereal yet because it was plastic. It was going to turn real and we just had to wait. And he put me into an emotional state, let's put it that way. So yeah, let's just, you know,
So,
fun kid
yeah.
pranks. Let's just convince people that reality isn't what it is.
Yeah. Also, this movie sort of spiked a fear that I have to this day,
Okay.
which is people appearing in mirrors.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it's to the point. A couple months ago, I was a chaperone for the middle school retreat with Austin and everything, and the
Mm-hmm.
room that I was in had this giant old fashioned looking mirror that was facing me as I was laying on the bed, and like Austin just saw me and I'm staring at the thing and I'm petrified, and he's like, "Hold on, I'll take care of this." And he just like throws a towel over it.
Yep.
And that's how it stayed the rest of the trip.
Legit.
But yeah, I'm a grown adult and I still have this fear,
I mean,
which is
fair.
probably why the movie scared me so much as a kid, because
Yep.
there's
It was like the
things
turning
appearing in
point.
reflections. But yeah, so I think that's my overall history with it.
Fair enough. Elle, is this a movie that you are familiar with?
I thought it might have been, but turns out no. I was thinking of the Dean Koontz book, The Watchers,
That is, yep.
a completely different thing with a genetically engineered dog.
Yes. And a monster.
It's a baboon, but yeah.
Yeah, yes, sorry. Yes. It's been a while since I read that. I read that as a kid. Interestingly enough, I knew I had never seen this movie. Like this is absolutely a first time watch on me. It's always been on my list because I am a huge Bette Davis fan. But it's a moderate ways down, or it was, I should say, just because for a long time I confused this movie with, because there's a movie version of The Watcher which I have also never seen.
Mm.
That stars, I want to say, Corey Haim. No, wait, Corey Feldman. Corey Feldman, I think. But anytime I would hear about Watcher in the Woods, I would confuse it with that.
You were right the first time, Corey Haim.
Corey Haim. Okay, it's one of the Coreys. So yeah, I had never seen it before now. That said, when I posted this movie onto our socials as our, I'll say, mostly daily horror history post, it got what for us is a pretty huge response of, "Oh yes, I did get emotionally scarred by this movie." And then it moved very quickly up my list, and then
Mm.
Holly's pick, and we're covering it now. So yay! But yeah, so this is a Disney movie. This is a Disney horror movie, and not a Miramax horror movie, which is technically produced by Disney or one of the other many studios under the umbrella. This is produced by Walt Disney Studios as a horror movie, which makes it a relative rarity. So I wanted to check in and see what are our thoughts of Disney as a whole? Disney proper, again, not Marvel, not Star Wars, but like, Al, are you a big Disney fan?
Not really, no. We never got it in our region kind of thing. Like, there was the Disney Channel that went out on, like, pay TV services.
Right.
But in Australia, originally, you had the two competing groups, and we were in the area that we couldn't get the, what was it, Ozstar, I think it was at the time, and they had the exclusivity on the Disney Channel on their service.
Mm-hmm.
We got Nickelodeon, so swings and roundabouts. But yeah,
Yeah,
no, Disney's never been a big part of basically my experience of life.
fair enough.
Yeah, it's interesting that there's this whole, like, almost a cult of personality around it.
Yes, there is, very much so.
A lot of the time, anytime I see any of, like, I think they're mostly Chinese, but Asian women, it's a lot of Minnie Mouse stuff, like a lot of Minnie Mouse.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, huh, that's interesting that this is something that almost like as a culture you guys have latched onto.
Yes.
Hmm.
And that is a whole thing over here in the States. Uh
So I've heard.
Disney adults are a thing. And then those who go beyond the Disney adult to a new level of it. Holly, what about you? How big of a role did Disney play both growing up and now?
So I grew up during the Disney Renaissance.
Right.
So Disney was, I was raised on Disney,
Yeah.
basically. My parents would take me to every Disney movie for as long as I can remember. Like, I think my earliest memory is seeing Aladdin, I believe, in theaters. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then, I mean, we supported Disney products quite a bit because I don't even know if I wanted all these items, but like I remember when Aladdin came out, also like only child syndrome, like I suddenly just had every Aladdin playset possible that you could have. And it would kind of happen like that with most of the Disney movies that came out around that time.
Yeah. That is the absolute height of Disney.
Oh yeah.
Like
And
we can
we
talk about like the Sleeping Beauty, Snow White. No, that is the height. The Little Mermaid to Lion King era.
Yeah, and we went during the 90s. We went to Disney World because we live in Georgia, so we're able to
Right.
drive over to Florida. So we went to Disney World not every year, but it was like every other summer, basically. It was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so now we go to Disney World the next summer. Like we rented out a beach house. Now we'll do that. Now we'll go back to Disney World, and because again, some of my earliest memories,
Right.
one of my earliest memories was I had a really creative idea because I was like 3, I guess, and we were at Disney World, and I love Donald Duck, and I still love Donald Duck, and all the kids were rushing the person in the costume before they had meet and greet areas, and I really wanted to get his attention, and no one was behind him. So I walked up and kissed his butt, and I got his attention.
That'll do it.
So yeah, and then my parents were like, "Yep, that one's ours. We're really proud." That, and
Nice.
then I think that was the same Disney trip that my mom almost got us kicked out because she chased the poor guy that was the Beast through the Disney park screaming at him. We had been waiting in line for me to get a picture with him, and he went on break at that moment.
Oh,
And again, this was before like the meet and greets where things were a little more organized.
right.
And I'm like, my dad was a little more understanding, and he's like, yeah, no, this guy's probably had a really hard day. And my mom was like, no, I have a crying child. You're going to get back here. Was chasing him down Disney, pulling on the back of his cloak. Apparently, he didn't have like a handler or anyone with him during
Oh
this
no.
time. So,
Fantastic.
yeah, raised on Disney.
Yes. A lot of the same. Like, obviously, I'm a little bit older, but if you're a child of the 80s, there is a good chance that you grew up as a Disney fan, in part because the arrival of home video. And that meant that a lot of their films were newly available to see on VHS or Betamax if you made the wrong choice, the right choice, but the wrong choice for the future. And also, there was Disney stuff on TV regularly. There's Wonderful World of Disney. There's, cable was taking off, so you had the Disney Channel. And
Hmm.
so I think, like you, one of my earlier memories is seeing a Disney film in theaters. In my case, The Fox and the Hound. And I don't have really strong memories of it, but I definitely remember going to see it. That era is weird for Disney because the animation is kind of in decline, but I still like Fox and the Hound, Black Cauldron, Oliver and Company.
I love that one.
Yeah, like good stuff. And at this point, the studio started doing a lot more of the live action stuff. And so while I hadn't seen Watcher in the Woods, I did see stuff like The Journey of Natty Gann, which was a huge part of my childhood, basically. Tron, Flight of the Navigator, the Herbie movies, stuff like that.
Sorry, I haven't heard of other people that know Flight of the Navigator.
Oh my God, yes.
I love Flight of the Navigator.
It's such a good movie.
Yes. Sorry, I never hear it mentioned. Yeah, I
No,
love
no,
Flight of
that's
the
good.
Navigator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, those were bread and butter films for me because like what we could watch was fairly well restricted. Like I said, I didn't start getting into horror movies until I was able to sneak over and watch them and things like that. But I was absolutely watching this stuff. And then of course the 90s stuff hit, they're off to the races. At this point, like I'm not what you call a Disney adult by any stretch. I think they have their misses in every era. They definitely have ones now. Listen, it's not a horror movie, but I could talk for a full podcast about everything wrong with this new Snow White movie.
Ugh.
How long do you
Mm-mm.
think you could get out of listing what's good about it?
About 2 minutes if I pushed it.
Yeah.
Like Rachel Zegler is a fucking star and does her best to try and save that movie, but everything else is bad. But that said, I do think they still do pretty well on the whole, even if you take out the Marvel stuff, the Star Wars stuff, the Pixar stuff. Like on their own, they're still doing pretty good as a studio. I'm not obsessed with them. I'm not, on 9 different subreddits and in 20 Facebook groups like I know some Disney adults end up being. But I still like them on the whole. But yeah, so getting into Watcher of the Woods specifically, give us a little bit of a backstory on the frankly fucking wild production history here.
Yeah, so I've got some notes helpfully collated here. It was directed by, and I'm not sure exactly of the name, but John Hugh Huff or Hogu from a screenplays credited to Brian Clemens, Harry Spalding, and Rosemary Ann Sisson. The producer, Tom Leach, pitched the film based on Florence Engel Randall's 1976 novel to Disney's Ron Miller and told him that this could be our Exorcist. Brian Clemens was originally brought on to write. However, the House of Mouse decided that Clemens' version was too dark, and it was first revised by Sisson and then Jerry Day.
I have to say, calling something this could be our Exorcist, and then they make a script and they decide that's too dark. Like, what were you expecting?
Yeah.
Did you watch a different Exorcist than I did?
Did you think The Exorcist, but for kids? Because I don't know what movie that is.
I mean, technically, we're all someone's children.
True.
The director was brought on by Miller based on his work on the horror film The Legend of Hell House. The Watcher in the Woods originally had a budget of approximately $7 million. It also had 3 different endings in stages: the intended original ending, an actual original theatrical ending, and then a final theatrical ending. The original ending made the Watcher a sort of blue insectoid alien who grabs Jan and escapes to the other realm, but Jan is able to grab Karen on the other side, and they make it back to the chapel, where Jan explains to Elliot that the Watcher needed Jan to free Karen. That was abandoned because Disney wanted to have the film released in 1980 to celebrate Davis's 50th anniversary as an actor. The actual original theatrical ending took out the whole Otherworld sequence, but kept the original alien appearance. He grabs Jan and vanishes, and then Jan reappears with Karen when Helen is interrogating Tom, Mary, and John. They head home, and Jan gives her explanation to Ellie. This ending actually made it into the first theatrical release in April in 1980 in New York, but apparently it went over so poorly with critics and fans for being unintelligible that Disney pulled the film from theaters, and several new endings were written featuring not only the studio writers, but sci-fi writers as well, all working separately. Visual effects designer Harrison Ellenshaw said that roughly 152 possible endings had been handed to him before he wrote the ending that they eventually went with. They then did reshoots, which was an entire mess because the 1980 actors' strike was going on at the time, and Davis couldn't return to England for reshoots, so her footage was shot in California. While the original film was brutalized by critics and fans, the re-released one was better received, even if praise wasn't universal. It made only $5 million in theaters from a $9 million budget, but found new life on home video as a cult classic. A couple of fun facts though. Bette Davis wanted to play the older and younger versions of Mrs. Aylward, and they did some screen tests to see if they could figure out how to reverse her age by 30 years, but they decided it didn't quite get there. Davis is legitimately one of the most intimidating women in the history of Hollywood. The director had the crew leave the screening room and told her, "Betty, I don't think you've made it." According to him, she took a long drag off her cigarette and said, "You're goddamn right." The home that was used in the film, it was called St Hubert's Manor and was near Ivor Heath in Buckinghamshire in England, but sadly it doesn't exist anymore as it was converted into apartments. And the actress who plays Karen at the end of the film is actually not the same actress who plays her throughout the rest of it. So, yeah, a couple interesting things and a hell of a history.
Yeah, I love. Like I said, I'm a Bette Davis fan. So when you hear that story of like trying to break it to her that I'm sorry we can't make you look young enough, her reaction when you hear that in her voice, and it is the most like quintessential Bette Davis thing ever. And also, I'm really sad that that house no longer exists because like I'm not somebody who's huge on house porn basically, but I would live there. That house was amazing.
I mean, if you're given a house, I think anyone would want to live there.
Well,
It's like, ooh,
yes,
free house.
I would seek to live there.
Yeah, I assumed there was a need for it.
Oh, for sure. A big ass house like that, covered in ivy in the middle of the forest, as long as the Wi-Fi is good, sounds good to me.
See, I mean, you say that about the Wi-Fi, but I know for a fact you guys have it pretty good over there.
This is true. Although that would be in England.
Yes, but for comparison, when I went to visit you guys in the US, your in-flight Wi-Fi was better than my fiber cable connection that I have here.
Yep.
Your in-flight Wi-Fi.
Yep.
So you don't dare to complain about internet, my friend.
No, 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 I not at all. That is totally fair. So yeah, for this film, honestly, I think because it is a Disney horror film directed largely as a family film, there's not a lot of content warning stuff, I think, on this. The only thing I could say is if drowning is a thing for you, there is a near drowning scene that is legitimately tense. Even for me, as somebody who doesn't have much issue with that on the whole. I think that one is fairly intense. Everything else is pretty. I don't know, unless there's something that I missed in terms of potential content warning stuff.
Things appear in mirrors and can
Well,
have
yes, okay.
dramatic effects on you later on in life.
Yes, things appearing in mirrors. I guess if getting cut on glass is a thing. Because, oh my, there are a lot of broken mirrors in this too.
A lot of bad luck.
Yep, so much bad luck. So yeah, Holly, what is this movie about?
So we open on the Curtis family being shown a manor house in rural England Mrs. Aylwood, the owner of the residence, who now lives in the guest cottage next door, she's said to be very picky about choosing who lives in the house. Immediately, Mrs. Aylwood seems to have a strange, almost obsession with the older daughter, Jan, which involves a lot of her standing and staring at her in a very creepy manner.
Yep.
And because of Jan, she allows the family to stay at the manor. Jan quickly begins to sense something strange and unusual about the property and begins to see strange blue lights in the woods, as well as triangles and glowing objects. On one occasion, she sees a blindfolded girl in a mirror in front of her. Shortly after the family settles in, Ellie, Jan's little sister, gets a puppy that she names Nerik, and Jan meets a boy named Mike and his mother Mary. After seeing the reflection of the name Nerik, it's Karen spelled backwards. Mary seems to panic. One afternoon, Nerik runs into the woods and Ellie chases after him. Jan goes into the woods to find her, eventually locating her at a pond. In the water, Jan can see a blue circle of light and is blinded by a flash, causing her to fall in. She nearly drowns, but Mrs. Aylwood saves her. Mrs. Aylwood brings Jan and Ellie into her home, where she tells Jan that Karen was the name of her daughter and that she mysteriously disappeared on the night of an eclipse when she was with some of the other teenagers at an old church. Later, Mike discovers that his mother was one of the people with Karen when she disappears, but she avoids his questions. Meanwhile, Jan attempts to get more information from John Keller, a reclusive aristocrat who was also there on that night, but he refuses to speak to her. On her way home, Jan cuts through the woods where she encounters a local hermit, Tom Coley, who tells Jan that he was also present at Karen's disappearance. He claims that during the seance-like initiation ceremony on the night of a lunar eclipse, Karen vanished when lightning struck the church and the bell fell. But he claims that Karen was gone before the bell hit the ground. Jan decides that she needs to recreate the ceremony during the upcoming solar eclipse, hoping it will bring Karen back. She gathers Mary, Tom, and John at the abandoned chapel, and they attempt to repeat the ceremony. Meanwhile, Ellie, while watching the eclipse from the front yard, suddenly goes into a trance-like state, apparently possessed, and enters the woods. At the chapel, the ceremony is interrupted by a powerful wind that shatters the windows, and Ellie appears in a voice that is not her own. She explains that an accidental switch took place 30 years ago, in which Karen traded places with an alien-like presence from an alternate dimension. Thus, the Watcher has been haunting the woods since, while Karen has remained suspended in time. The Watcher leaves Ellie's body manifesting as a pillar of light, fueled by the circle of friendship. It engulfs Jan and lifts her into the air, but Mike intervenes and pulls her away before the Watcher disappears. Simultaneously, the eclipse ends, and Karen, still the same age when she disappears, reappears. She is still blindfolded. She removes the blindfold just as Mrs. Aylwood enters the chapel.
Yep. So this film, I think, is largely it's driven on two things primarily. You've got the characters and you've got the mystery that's going on. So let's do first things first. Elle, what do you think of the characters here and the performances? How do they work for you?
Oh boy. I don't recall if I've seen a movie so underacted.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have the ones that are like, oh, so overacting, like, or totally ham. It's like, yeah, they were mostly there and they could have been reading the script off camera, I think, because there were a lot of vacant stares and not monotone, but very, very bland performances, I think, for my part. And as far as characters go, there's also like it it wasn't confusing. It was just like a you haven't really done enough to distinguish them as their own characters. Like they are all kind of vaguely British people.
With the exception of the very American teen daughter.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Well,
but
the
even then,
Curtis
that's like,
family, they're Americans.
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
but even then, it's like that seems to be their biggest trait. Is like, yep, they're American, not with any like any stereotypes that associate with that. They are just a different voice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think this probably informs the rest of my opinions in that it's like,
That's fair.
yeah, not really something I landed well on.
That's fair. I think the characters on the page are really solidly built as a whole. We have fairly prototypical character types. We have the creepy old lady, we have the imaginative little girl, we have the good girl teen, the good meaning but perhaps overprotective mother and just generally well-meaning father. But I do think there are some nice shades in them, and I think the story twists those fairly nicely. Particularly, I think Miss Aylwood, because absolutely at the start, I was like, okay, well, here's our villain character because she is standing off in the distance. She is being creepy. There is a whole ominous vibe, and then it nicely twists it to where no, she is the very sympathetic, supporting, kind of the emotional heart of the film in a lot of ways. I think for the performances, I think the adults are generally quite good. I think Bette Davis is a little bit wasted here, but she does get to do some good stuff every now and then, and she's delivering the performance, the dialogue, as only Bette Davis can. I was a little surprised by how small her role was, but I think she does well with it. The kids, they're delivering kid performances. Like, yes, there wouldn't. They're also kid actors in the early 1980s, and that doesn't necessarily make them good, but it was also that was the style at that point. And it wasn't because all kid actors were bad. That was just sort of, it's kind of the Bella Swan from Twilight situation where you look at that movie and Kristen Stewart is giving a bland as fuck performance in that franchise. But that's the point of the character. It's a or it is an audience insert character where you're targeting it at a particular audience so they see themselves in the girl who the vampire and the werewolf are fighting over. Kind of the same here, where you're targeting it at these younger audiences and encouraging, because you don't want it to be too particular, or you want it to be something where the audience can kind of see themselves in the role. So I give them a little bit of slack on that because I actually quite like the characters, so I can forgive the line delivery because I think what's more important is that you care about the relationship between Jen and Ellie, and I do personally. Holly, how about you? How do the characters work? How do they overall fit it for you?
So for me, rewatching it a couple days ago, I hadn't watched this since I don't even know when. I think maybe high school was the last time I
Mm-hmm.
watched this. Like, definitely, I haven't watched it since I've been married. So it's been a long while. First of all, I was so surprised because I guess in my childhood mind, I thought Bette Davis had a lot bigger role in it than what I remembered her part being a lot bigger, but
Right.
it wasn't. So I was surprised that there weren't more scenes with her. I thought she was good.
Mm-hmm.
I think as a kid, I thought they were all good, but I watched this when I was like 7 or 8. So
Right. And again,
they're
it's kind of designed for somebody, particularly a girl of that age, to be
right.
like, that's me.
I
So it's easier. Yeah.
They were fine. Like Jan and Ellie were fine. Though, I mean, and I thought this as a child. I mean, I always related more to Jan. Did anyone else want to just murder Ellie at some point and bury her body in the woods?
She didn't give off too bad of annoying kid syndrome. She gives off annoying kid syndrome, for sure.
I didn't get enough of it to have an opinion, honestly.
If her scenes had been a little longer, I think I probably would have wanted to murder her. But
Yeah.
like even as a kid, I was like, okay, I don't care about you. Why do you exist? But I understand the relationship between sisters. But yeah, I think it works. It works fine. It could have been better, but it's just fine.
Yeah. I will say, outside of Ellie, Jan, Mrs. Aylwood, and kind of the parents, I guess, and Tom, I do agree. Outside of them, everybody else is a nothing character. I don't give the slightest shit about the prospective boyfriend character.
You don't care about Mike? He's such an in-depth character.
Dude, he is nothing.
He makes the wise decision to sorry, this is one point that's always bothered me. He makes the wise decision to help the girl that's been freaking out about seeing another girl in reflections by taking her to a fun house to a hall of mirrors.
Right? Like,
He's fantastic. I want him running my therapy sessions.
but yeah, like everybody else is, the parents are just kind of there, but I think they're good for what their roles are. Mike's nothing. His mom is a nothing character other than to just kind of be there for the end. John Keller is ominous. Actually, I did kind of like that because I thought they do a nice job of setting it up. Like I would say about the time that John Keller and Tom Colley kind of enter the story and start interacting, I'm like, oh, they fucking murdered that girl. Like that is a that there's a body somewhere in those woods.
Yeah.
And obviously that's what the movie is trying to set you up to think. And we'll talk about how successful the subversion of that is. But they were fine for what they were required. I think they all kind of fade a bit at the end, but that's because then it's the Jan show. And poor Lynn Holly Johnson she's giving a very flat performance, but it's fine. It didn't bother me that much. But yeah, so the other part of this obviously is the mystery that arguably dominates this whole thing, setting it up like it's a haunted house thing before kind of shifting, but still presenting that the big hook for the movie, I would say. Holly, how absorbing is this? How well do you think it is laid out?
Like the overall
Just the overall
mystery
mystery aspect of it, yeah.
So, and again, okay, so I'm watching this from two different perspectives.
Right,
because
of course.
I remember my first reactions as a child watching this, and then to watch it many years later.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, as a kid, I was on the edge of my seat.
Right.
As were my friends. Again, this was like our big sleepover movie. This was, there's a mystery. Creepy old lady murdered her daughter and is about to kill this girl. That's, I mean, first thoughts there.
Ha.
And then, after that, I've suddenly forgotten his name again. Creepy
John.
Aristocat dude.
Yeah, John.
Yeah, after that, when you're like, okay, well, maybe it isn't the mother. Okay, well, it's definitely this guy.
Yep.
So, I think I'm bring up the end later. There's a lot to be said on the end.
Yes.
But everything leading up to it. And again, watching it from a child's perspective or a preteen's perspective, it's great. Mm-hmm. Even as an adult, I think it still works.
Yeah.
Leading up, because there's a lot of misdirection in it. And there's a lot of mystery, all the little things with Ellie and her being like, Neerick is talking to me. He's the one that told me that you needed to get off that rock, or, he ran into the woods. I heard the tune from him or whatever, all of that stuff. I think it works.
Yeah. I would agree for the most part. I did laugh when they did this is just sort of the way that it's filmed, but when Ellie writes Neerac on the window and then they shift around to the other side and treat it like Karen is a big shocking reveal that we weren't supposed to realize right off the bat.
Yeah.
That made me chuckle a little bit, but it's fine. Like it's
the line where like Chan is freaked out and she's like, that's not your writing, or that's not your normal writing. I'm like, does your sister often write with her finger on windowsills?
Right.
Is this like the norm for your family?
Yep, you're right. It does. I think the thing that I mainly kept in mind while watching this was, yes, this is clearly for kids. And so I am far from a kid at this point. And so I was trying to picture, okay, how does this work? How would this work? And I think it's probably pretty effective for kids. I will say, even as an adult, it got me a few times just in terms of the story. Because I was with you, I was like, all right, creepy Bette Davis. Yeah, there's something suspicious there. Oh, it's not Miss Elwood. Okay. Oh, okay. It's John. Tom's gonna be the guy who is guilt ridden stuff, which is all true and accurate. He's gonna reveal that the three of them, maybe it was an accident, maybe it was something like that, but they 100% buried a body in those. Oh, it's not that? Okay, well, what is it then? It does a good job of shifting the expectations, I think, better than a lot of mystery films that I've seen. On the whole, it really works well for me.
I had a theory when I was a kid, and I know this is like such a weird oddball theory.
Okay.
Because I guess I just noticed something. Like I mentioned it to my mom, and she was like, "You have a big imagination." And so, in when they're showing the scene with the séance or whatever, the circle,
Right.
and they show the bell like shaking, to
Mm-hmm.
me, it always looked like there was an eye in the bell, like it was something watching her.
Oh.
And I mean, it's something I noticed at like age again 7 or 8 whenever I first watched this as a child, and I would pause it after that, like after I watched the whole movie, and I'm like, is that the Watcher? Because I
Mm-hmm.
always thought that the little thing, it's just like a line like in the bell, but I always thought it looked like the eye, and so especially after I watched the whole film, I thought that that was like the Watcher,
Right.
and then that was like a glimpse of what happened.
Yep.
But again, just crazy theory.
Oh yeah, for sure. Elle, how about you? How does the mystery aspect play out for you? Was it able to engage you in a way I think obviously the characters didn't necessarily do?
Not really. I don't know if it's because I'm oblivious to it, but it didn't really feel like there were any clues along the way to the reveal. It's like there was that little bit of the suspense of who's, the villain, but it's like, okay, well, what is the end result of said villainy?
Right.
It's like, are we leading up to a murder mystery? Or, is it a stolen identity thing? Or it's like, no, it's just there is nothing that I'm getting from this. And yeah, even with the suspense aspect of oh, who's responsible, the expressions really didn't give me much to go by either. Again, maybe
Mm-hmm.
this is me just being blind about it, but I didn't really get the feeling of like an intimidation or suspicious feel from anyone. It's
Huh.
more like at most Betty Davis looked slightly worried in a couple of shots, but I didn't get like trying to, not even mugging for the camera, like sort of like
Right.
ooh, like almost mustache twirling that you would almost expect from this type of kids movies, where it's like it's clearly suggesting more than it should.
Mm-hmm.
I think they might have seen stuff like that and dialed too far back.
So the performance problem undersold the mystery for you then.
Yeah. Like you were getting some clues like with the backward writing on the window that apparently no one knows how to read unless you're looking at it the right way.
Right.
You're looking at that and it's like, huh, that R's backwards. Wait a minute. It's like no one can make that step of logic.
In fairness, I think the movie makes it clear the adults and even Jan figure it out pretty quick. They're just not immediately correcting Ellie and saying, no, you're writing Karen backwards. It treats it like a big reveal for audiences, but I don't think the characters seem fooled by that.
Yeah, and like no one reacts how one would expect for this type of story to play out. Even it's like looking at the Karen in the window and like Mary gets a little bit flustered. It's like, no, maybe a bigger deal. You should look like more chilled by it or more suspicious about what's happening. I don't know. I think the performances pulled the mystery out of it too much for me.
That's fair enough.
Hmm.
So this is obviously, it teases that it's a supernatural, and I guess it is supernatural in aliens and other dimensions. It's a different kind of supernatural, but it's still more than natural. And it does an interesting thing that I think is actually a little bit more sophisticated than you would expect for a kids' film of this era in setting up this whole ghost story thing before going into, again, we'll get to the ending. So Holly, how well does the supernatural stuff play off to you while still being family friendly?
So I love it because it doesn't, and this is what I loved as a kid, it doesn't show too much.
Right.
I think some films just, they try to go for the supernatural thing and they show too much.
Yeah, legit.
And that showing, and I know we'll get to this also, the remake, showing an actual like monster or creature, it's too much.
Right.
There are opinions, but I like leaving that mystery. We don't need to know what the watcher looks like.
Mm-hmm.
That's best left up to the imagination. And I think a movie like this, just like I used to always think that it was an eye in the bell, like watching
Right.
her, it's best left up to the viewer's imagination. And I think that this movie does that really well.
Fair enough. Elle, does the supernatural stuff play any better to you than the mystery stuff?
A little bit, but it's like it doesn't do enough to carry it forward. Like there needed to be, I think, more of a lean in to it. Like you see Karen eventually in the mirror. Okay, cool.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any noises going on? Is the set in a different lighting? Are there any like undercover, like under the musical stings to play off that? It needed more or none.
Okay.
Yeah, it just needed something.
Fair enough. Not every movie's gonna work for everybody. That is fine. I think for me, to start with, it needs to be made clear. This is a 1980, not 80s,
Mm-hmm.
1980 movie. So I am going to be very forgiving on the fact that they are trying to do special effects work that portrays something that on the page it seems like something where you would give this to the visual effects person. They would be like, what? You want me to portray this unportrayable thing? How am I going to make this happen? I do really like how it very clearly sets this up as a haunted house story and then changes that because it did leave me legitimately surprised and intrigued to see what was going on from there. I think the effects work is okay for what it's doing. And then I guess it's time to talk about the ending.
We've gotten there.
So, yeah, I guess for me, the seance part is fine. It's what I would expect from this. I'll be honest, it seems like we're going to disagree on this. I like the original theatrical ending better. I think there's still problems with it in terms of, yes, if you just saw that and you didn't see the original, or not the original, the final version of the film, you're going to be going, what the fuck is going on here? Because it does not explain things well. The little postscript bit with Jan and Ellie where Jan is sort of explaining what happened doesn't do the trick. But I know what they were going for with the light to represent the alien thing and the Ellie speaking possessed in a voice thing. I don't think it visually works. And I think there was a version that they could come up with where, and I'm sure this was one of the 152 potential endings that they came up with. Holy shit. But I think that there was something that they could have done where we still get that creature, because that creature in that original ending, it's creepy as fuck. I don't know if they decided it would be too much for kids because it's creepy and gross and scary looking and such. But they could do that, still have Kyle Richards as Ellie sort of speaking through it in a voice, basically say the same dialogue and sort of maybe combine the two endings in a way that I think would have potentially worked better. But all that is okay. I think the biggest problem I have with the ending is the Disney-fied aspect of it.
Uh-huh.
Like, it ends with everything is fine, everything is happy, everything is good. I'm not saying I want a massacre at this, but it ends like a Disney animated film would. And that, it just rings really false to me. I also think the theatrical ending that was ultimately the final one ends really abruptly. And I don't think that necessarily works. So the ending did nearly kill this movie for me. Not quite. It didn't get there, but I had issues. Holly, how about you? How unleash on this ending?
All right, here we go. First of all, in my opinion, I'll get your opinions. I think it
Yep.
works much better with my mother's ending. I think she added on to this ending, but she said she read about this in the newspaper and it was not a happy ending. And that's why it was such a big deal, was because Disney was upset because it's Disney and you can't do a tragic ending.
Yep.
So I none of the endings really work for me.
Yeah.
Have you've seen the deleted scene with the creature?
Yes.
Have
Yes.
you seen both the deleted scenes?
No, I've only seen the
Okay.
one.
And I may I haven't been able to find the other one on YouTube. I have the DVD and the other deleted ending is on the DVD.
Okay.
I don't think that one works at all because the effects are just so bad.
Is this the one
It's
because where it's like the sort of approximation of what the original ending was?
So it is, the creature comes in, it's the same creature, it takes her, then it shows where it's taking her.
Yeah.
The effects, I mean, this is like, no offense to the movie of Tron, it sort of reminds me a little bit of Tron, but those effects, it reminds me of the bike race in Tron.
Okay.
In the original Tron, those effects have no business being in this movie.
Right.
And so like there's this weird beam of light, if I'm remembering this correctly, which I think I am, there's this weird, again, I can only be described like the bike race, like that's how she's being transported. And then she shows up almost on like this weird planet type thing, but they don't show too much of it, and Karen is just like waiting there. And then like the watcher like embraces both of them, and then there's like the weird Tron like beam of light thing back, but it's both of them, and there's a really weird sound effect that goes with it that doesn't work at all. And then they both show up,
Yeah.
and then it's shown she brings Karen to Mrs. Aylwood, and like that's the other ending.
Mm-hmm.
That one really didn't work for me. The creature I did think was actually creepy. I don't think it works when it shoots beams out of its eyes, though.
No. No.
They did not need to go that far. I don't think it works the way that they do the ending with Ellie.
No.
And I mean, it's obvious that this child isn't speaking. Also, I Okay, so going in, I'm just gonna call it my mother's ending right now because this is the one
Yep.
she used to always tell me, like a bedtime story. So going into this, you have Ellie does come in. The wind comes, Ellie comes in. She doesn't actually speak at all. There is a much deeper voice, as if it is coming from somewhere else. And it explains essentially what Ellie was explaining, that they
Mm-hmm.
were trapped there. And then Jan completely disappears. Everybody starts freaking out. Then there is light, and then Karen appears in her place. Jan is gone.
Right.
Her mother is shown like wandering near the chapel, calling out for her, much like Mrs. Aylwood from the flashback. And then
Mm-hmm.
she sees all of them leaving the chapel, and she keeps asking where her daughter is. And then it cuts to sometime later, Karen is with her mother, and she's like sitting on the couch. Her mother is, fawning over her, attending to her, and she turns around, looks at the mirror, and it is Jan in the mirror.
Right.
And that's how it ends.
See, yeah, I'm on board with that.
I think that is so much better.
But Disney, so no, that's
Yeah.
not happening.
Yeah, Disney shot that down
Yeah,
immediately, because that's how my mother always thought it should end.
for sure. Elle, I'm going to go out on a limb and say you probably are not keen on this ending.
No, like, again, no one is reacting even remotely how theoretically people would.
Yeah.
Even like that deleted ending where it's like Jan goes and meets Karen and then they come back together, I think that would work better. Like, because that
The
actually,
effects don't work in that one, though.
Yeah.
The effects were the least problematic thing about either ending for me.
I cannot begin to explain the effects in this, though. on the
That's
other
fair.
ending, I
Well-
promise you, they're bad.
But
Yeah.
they're also, because that being the original scene, we also know those are unfinished effects.
Mm.
Like, that was part of why that didn't happen.
But even then, the effects are kind of like the suspension of disbelief. It's like,
Right.
Yeah, they're bad, but allow them to represent what they are supposed to be doing. It's not going to
Yep.
be, this is legitimately what's happening. It's like, okay, it's a little bit of a removal of the idea from what was, but it represents this.
Right.
So I think that would have worked better because it actually shows something happening that needs a bit more of a story to work. But then again,
Mhm.
I guess that doesn't because the rest of it was not good. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I can see if ultimately, I think if the performances aren't playing, yeah, a lot of this is not going to work.
yeah. So no one's freaking out really about her being back. Like her mother is, Bette Davis, but
Right.
not enough and in the correct way, I would say. It's like, okay, well, she's back. She's also not aged in 30 years. What does that do to that person? How is she going to react besides a small smile and just a hug? That's not how that would work.
No, I buy that. I buy that reaction because there's a lot going on. There would be a lot going on in Mrs. Aylwood's head, and that's a problem with the fact that it is very abrupt, that ending. But like, I see in that performance, in that moment, there's disbelief, but also ultimately, fuck it, that stuff doesn't matter for this moment because my daughter is back.
Yeah, I'm talking more from the other side. It's like, okay, what's Karen gone through? It's just like blinking of the eyes, and then all of a sudden, all her friends are like adults in their like midlife crisis, and her mum's like nearly dead.
Yeah, no,
to her
Karen.
eyes, it's like,
Karen is.
how would you even recognize them?
Yeah, Karen does kind of like, I guess, shrug it off a little bit.
Yeah, and then even
I
everyone
can
else
see
is
that.
just like she's back.
Well, that's the Disneyness of it,
Yeah,
which is again part of my problem with the ending.
yeah, no, not for me, I think.
That's fair. That's fair. Yeah. So the one of us I think that have seen it, Holly. Here's your chance to go off on the remake because I have not seen it.
Okay, so
I'm guessing Elle has not seen it.
I think I'm tempted to, just to see if it does it better.
no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Don't. Um, I haven't seen the whole thing. Okay.
Okay.
I stopped at Creepy Plague Doctors because that's what the Watcher is in this.
Wait, what?
Yeah. It's like,
I'm sorry. I'm gonna need some context on this.
and there's
How
no
do creepy
blind.
plague doctors?
I don't know. There's no blindfold. There's Creepy Plague Doctor mask, and I don't know. Everyone smoked a lot of drugs. Okay. I'm trying to remember this whole thing because I've seen clips of it. I started watching it from the beginning and I couldn't. I couldn't. I'm not even sure if she shows up in the mirror in this one. But there's like a whole side story where the Mrs. Aylwood character, played by Angelica Houston, who
Which
is
is good casting.
yeah, when I originally saw that, I was like, oh, this might actually be good.
Right.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
She goes on. There's like this whole weird backstory about the Watcher and these little girls and stuff, and it doesn't work. It tries to show too much. It tries to explain too much. It tries to over explain too much. So
So
just
it's just a plague doctor?
I'm trying to remember exactly what it was because it didn't come out that long ago, but I
Yeah,
swear
it was like
I
2017.
blocked some of this from my memory.
Because I haven't read the book, but I looked up the book before for this, and in the book, it's still an alien. Like,
Also, there's no dog in this. Ellie names her doll Lyric because it's less creepy when the doll's talking to you.
that's legitimately more generic because that is what I would expect rather than the dog. So they went with the more boring choice.
Yeah.
Huh.
And yes, the Watcher was originally a doctor who'd been alive during the Black Plague.
Huh.
They go a completely different angle with it.
Wow.
And the Watcher is essentially keeping Karen, and they're trying to bargain with him.
I should also, in complete fairness, point out that this is a Lifetime film. So, which is not a slam on Lifetime films. I'm simply saying that this did not have the budget or prestige, I guess is the wrong word for it, but essentially prestige or resources behind it that a theatrical release would have. And Lifetime films are a very specific kind of thing, obviously. They're practically their own genre. But still, wow.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It was, and like, I'm sorry because I love Melissa Joan Hart. It was directed by her.
Yep.
Well, the whole, and she said it in an interview. Her mom had been trying to get the rights to the movie because Melissa Joan Hart loved the movie, but they wanted to do a remake like early 2000s so Melissa Joan Hart could be the girl in it.
Right.
And then it got to a point where it was like, well, I'm too old to be Jan and I'm too young to play Mrs. Aylwood, so now I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
direct. And no.
Yeah, no, that's
I'm
for like,
no. If this movie didn't work for you, I promise the remake isn't going to work for you.
yeah, that's like I like Melissa Joan Hart perfectly fine. I'm not somebody who was a big Sabrina fan. Not the original Sabrina. I do like the Netflix show.
I grew up with Sabrina. Before Sabrina, she was in Clarissa Explains It All. She was in an episode of Are You Afraid of the Dark? Very famous
Mm-hmm.
episode. Yeah, like all of that. I love Melissa Joan Hart. But so yes, I was excited when they were doing this. I was like,
Right.
oh, okay, she's directing and she's a big fan of the movie, so she understands, I would imagine. And then they cast Angelica Houston, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, no, this works. No, it doesn't work. It doesn't.
Is she? I don't even know. Is she a big director? Like, or does
No,
she
I
do a
think
lot of?
no. This was her first directing.
Okay, got it. Well, we all got to start somewhere. Yeah, that definitely sounds like a choice.
Sure was.
All right. Well, for people who did like this, and I will say I'm a little middle of the road on it, as you might have guessed. But for people who did like this, let's start. Elle, obviously you weren't keen on this, but do you have anything at all that would be, if you like this, I would suggest that you watch or read or consume this?
The only thing that's coming to mind is the first of the Goosebumps series, Welcome to Dead House, because that has a similar kind of mystery vibes with the supernatural in the background, but I think it lands a hell of a lot better.
Okay.
I still have almost nightmares about it, and this is like 20 to 30 years since I've read it.
Mm-hmm. The first book, as opposed to like the TV show.
Yep.
Cool. Holly, what about you? What for people who like this, what would you recommend for them to check out?
I mean, I will recommend. I don't always. I promise I will not always go to Gateway Horror. By the way,
No, that's fine. This
I
is a
will.
gateway horror, so it makes sense.
Well, what I'm recommending is also something I will be choosing probably sometime in October, which was my other major Gateway Horror one, which was Lady in White.
Okay, I'm not super. I know the title.
I'm gonna choose it in the fall. Again, I don't always mean to do this, but
You're good.
it
No.
for multiple reasons. One of which being this big, lots of memories with my mom on this one, and then
Mm-hmm.
it also takes place on Halloween.
Okay.
So I'm gonna recommend it in the fall on us doing it.
Nice.
But I think there are definite, and I would say Lady in White. It has the mystery to it. It definitely has a big mystery in it, and it's got a lot of similar elements, though it's a little more ghost story, more classic ghost story
Mm-hmm.
type.
Cool. So I do have a couple. The first one I'm gonna go. These are both family friendly horror fantasy kind of movies because that very much fits this vibe. The first one I'm gonna do is 1990s The Witches.
Oh,
PG horror film, stars Angelica Houston, who apparently fucked it up in the remake, but
she's fabulous in The Witches, though. I used to love that
she
movie.
is. And it has a lot of the same tone. It definitely focuses on the kid characters dealing with this supernatural thing. You've got the creepy older woman who is actually legitimately creepy and evil in that one. It's just a great movie. And then the other one I'm going to do is it is another Disney produced horror film specifically from the early 80s era. And it is Something Wicked This Way Comes.
Hmm.
1983. It is also based on a 1960s novel, in this case, the Ray Bradbury novel, that I was a huge fan of as a kid. It is very, as at least as best as I can remember, it's been years. This is one of the, I didn't see this when it came out, but I feel like I saw it early mid 90s, something like that. And I haven't seen it since. It's very much along the lines of this movie in tone and in, again, kids. There are definitely elements of horror, but also sort of a fantastical element in there as well. Great cast who all give pretty good performances and a lot of mood. It's well worth, at least, again, my memories of it are that it is well worth checking out. So let's go into our final thoughts on this one. Let's go potentially worst to best. So I'll have at it.
Yeah, no, not for me. I
Not for you.
I will give it 1/2 of a star out of 5, which makes it
Oh,
Wow.
half of an expression that one actor used one time.
wow.
That hurts.
I felt like at one point I had the honor of like the film I adore that you hate the most in The Night House, and that is no longer the case. I am sad.
Or I'm sure there's others.
Oh, I'm sure there will be others. I am. I think this is solid. There is a lot of it that doesn't work. So that doesn't work because the era and the genre that it came out. I agree the performances are not great. I think there's a reason for that, but still, particularly if you're watching it now, it's kind of a hard pill to swallow. On the flip side, I do think the script is really, really good at keeping the mystery, keeping you off balance, and wondering what's going on without being frustrating about it. The ending is just a mess in so many ways, as we kind of got into. So I am middle of the road on this. I am a 3 triangle mirror cracks out of 5. Holly, how about you? How did this hold up compared to your love of it growing up?
It wasn't as good as I remember.
Right.
Which I'm now afraid to revisit Lady in White because of that. But yeah, it wasn't as good as I remember. At the same time, I know for me, it holds a lot of memories. It holds a lot of nostalgia, and I still like it for the creepy vibes. It really helped bring me into the horror genre without traumatizing me, like
Right.
Shining at age 7. So yeah, I'm going to give it 3 trauma-inducing girls in mirrors out of 5.
That is very fair. Nostalgia is an important thing, and our memories of stuff that we love as a kid. Some of it doesn't always work quite as well, but still, that part is important. So that is The Watcher in the Woods. For next episode, we're going in a very different direction.
Just
Not
a
gateway
little.
horror.
Not gateway horror at all.
Well, it
We're going.
depends. We'll get into that when we get to it.
Yeah, we'll get into that when we get into it. But we are going from a film that has to make sure that everybody is happy and smiling at its ending to a film that is straight up murking kids every 5 minutes. Elle, what are we covering next time?
Battle Royal.
Yes, the Japanese film, which is debatable, controversial, but let's just say shares a lot in common with films like The Hunger Games. I'm excited for that one.
As am I.
Because that's going to be a discussion. I adore that movie. So until next time, you can find us at whatever podcatcher you prefer. We are on Blue Sky and Instagram at Final Ghouls Pod.
And if you've gotten to this point, you are still legally bound to us by contract. You did listen to it, to give us a 5-star review, and to leave a nice comment for us. Otherwise, we will get you.
Absolutely. Meanwhile, you can find me at J Thomas for Orlomania on Blue Sky and Letterboxd.
You can find me at shards@kind.social on Mastodon and Shards System on Letterboxd.
And you can find me at Holly Culp on Blue Sky or at Miniature Magic 18 on Instagram.
And you can find all of us playing role-playing games at Final Show Films on Twitch and YouTube. And Elle, what is our horror book survival guide tip?
Don't assume that it's your naked boyfriend, girlfriend, or other partner underneath the sheet, because it's probably not.